All right, hello. Um, this is Haiku. I'm going to do something new today. I'm going to go over the Shadows of Innistrad Remastered spoilers, and to kind of go over what cards I think are going to shake up either Explorer or Historic Pauper. Since these cards, this video is going to go over the SOI Remastered cards, which will be legal in Explorer Pauper. But obviously they're also legal in Historic Pauper, so I'll go over if I think the card is viable in either format and what kind of decks I see it being placed in. So starting off with Wooburg Order, Jug Purge is already on Arena. This card not really playable. Unfortunately, this wasn't downshifted. We don't have a sacrifice in white yet. There is another card, Celestial Purge, which maybe eventually can come to Arena. Bard Grace, I think it's just a solid card for token decks. It can save your guys, or it can buff them for a swing Alpha Strike. This card's not that good. We have better removal. Moving it around and stuff is whatever. I don't think you really can abuse it. Let's see. And then the other nice part is they included the rarities of the of how they're going to be printed on MTGA, so you can know which ones are actually going to be printed at common. This is already on Arena. This is just a vanilla 2/2 vanilla. This one, this can save your creatures. It may be a reasonable card in the really go wide 1 toughness creature that can really get blown out by Suffocating Fumes or in the Festivities. But there is an enchantment, Fortifying Provisions, that gives your creature +0/+1. And I think you want that because this only lasts for 1 turn. And you have to have the mana up the turn that they wrath you, which is difficult to have. So I don't think, it's more of an interesting card, but I still don't think that one is going to really see play. All of these I don't think are playable. A removal spell, but I think, again, white has better removal now. It used to be that white would love something like this, but now it's got plenty of options. Actually, I think Puncturing Light potentially is already on Arena, and there's probably the difference here is it's normally they do damage, and this one is based on the creature's power, which can get around creatures with big butts. So far, white doesn't really have a lot. This could be a solid trick in an equipment deck, but again, not really where you want to be. I don't think there's equipment decks really. So one in Explorer and Historic Pauper, equipment is almost trumped by auras, and the reusability of equipment and moving it around doesn't really make a big difference, and so equipments aren't really a thing. And the other thing is you only have one payoff card only a couple payoff cards for going with equipment rather than auras. And ethereal armor just kind of trumps anything that any other equipment deck can do in the aura deck. And then, as I recall, okay, so here's the first interesting one where, oh gosh, I forgot the name of the card. Sphere Gargantua deck. So there's a historic gameplay video that I posted, Historic Pauper, where I played with a worse Essence Flux to bring back the Gargantuas. So Essence Flux is basically a better cloud shift, and it's also in better colors. So it plays really well with any creature that you can cast for some sort of discount off of its casting cost at a cost of having to sacrifice it. So Evoke on Earth, and it also works really well with prototype cards. So in Explorer, there's no Evoke, and Unearth cards aren't that good to blink back. So you would really just see it in the prototype decks. And then for Historic Pauper, obviously, Innistrad Gargantua was a really good target for this. And obviously, you're going to play with Muldrifter. So, you already kind of have probably blue-black, although there is an argument. There's a couple other really good Evoke targets that compete with the Innistrad Gargantua. There's the 2/4 in white that brings along 2 1/1s, and so if you evoke it and then you blink it, you get 4 1/1s and a 2/4 flyer. A pretty strong play. So it could be an argument to going Esper, or potentially not even having to play the Innistrad Gargantua. So I think that this card being blue really promotes flexible deck building, because you start with a deck of 4 Muldrifter, 4 Essence Flux, and then you just add in whatever other color you think is going to pair best with blinking creatures. If you go white, the benefit of going white is you do get the aforementioned Cloud Shift is to work with the other white Evoke creature. There's a green-blue Evoke creature that makes clues. And then, like I said, Innistrad Gargantua is the best probably Unearth card to go with it. So check out that video I did of the Innistrad Gargantua. You could kind of imagine how making its 2 mana blink spell costs one less is going to really fire up the deck. I didn't play Muldrifters in that deck, but with this being 1 mana, I definitely think you then go ahead and bite the bullet and play the full form. It's not really biting a bullet. It's focusing your deck toward that angle rather than trying to just hit really fast. So this doesn't quite create a new archetype, but it really powers up existing archetypes. Again, a blink in blue is really where the power of this card is. The bonus with the spirits doesn't really matter. There are a couple spirits in Explorer Pauper, but I don't think there's anything really too exciting about playing this in Explorer Pauper. I mean, it would be solid with prototype. I could see it, being really crucial in that deck, but I don't think that deck is somehow going to break the meta. Moving on, this card is a pretty good unblockable. The unfortunate part about this text is that it doesn't tap the creature. So if you're trying to get in unblockable damage, you're not getting attacked by the opponent's creature, so you don't get a chance to tap you don't get to lock down the opponent's creature normally because they're just holding it up. So it's really only good if you're like in an aggro battle and it's a race. I think it's too niche, but if there's a blue deck that kind of wants to play a little bit more aggro-y and have some good game against in an aggro matchup, maybe. What's nice is it is a spirit, so it goes with Essence Flux. So when you blink it, like you could blink it, keep a creature tapped down, block another creature like after the opponent attacks with them, and really blow them out with a surprise 2/4 and locking down a different creature. So it could see some play. I just don't see a deck for it yet. This one was a little interesting, but there's no payoffs for scrying every turn. There is a card that gives you benefit for surveilling if you surveil that turn. But until we see a payoff for scrying, I don't think this is a playable card. But this has future possibilities. Anytime you do something every turn, it could really lead to a strong combination. And then let's see. This is an unfortunate upshift. So we won't be able to play with this in Explorer Pauper or Historic Pauper, but it will be legal in the Vintage Arena format. But yeah, it's unfortunate that they upshifted it. There was a couple printings already at Uncommon, so it's not that surprising, but it's just unfortunate that they decided to do that. And then here's another frantic inventory. It's sorcery, so it doesn't get countered by dispel. But I don't think, I mean, even frantic inventories I'm starting to cut in my decks, even though they're very powerful. So I don't think there's a deck that wants 8 copies of it. And then the unfortunate things I want to mention for blue is Nagging Thoughts did not get printed. So Nagging Thoughts would have been a very, very solid madness spell that also fills up your graveyard for your terrors, but it was not printed in this set, so it's not coming to Arena yet. Maybe not ever, because I don't think it gets played in any of the pieces are focusing on, Pioneer. All right, moving on to black. So here's the big one. Alms of the Vein is really going to power up the red-black burn decks. And so we were talking about, so I've been playing the synth red-black synthesizer version, and those specifically don't play well with madness. So you have to make a choice if you want to play synth plus reckless impulse, or do you want to play the madness variants with basically using blood tokens. And so this really powers up that style of deck and benefits that. And I think it needed that because I think before this got printed, the favor was you should be playing the synth impulse version like I've been playing on my channel. But now it might have swung it so much in the favor of this. So you got to play this. So 3 damage to face for basically 1 mana, although you are sacrificing a blood token, so you're paying a mana there, so it's almost like 2 mana. And then you also have Fiery Temper as a madness outlet. So that's in Explorer. Then Historic, you also get the Imp that also costs 1 mana and is also very strong. So I would say with the Imp, that probably puts the Madness version over the top and makes it the style to play in Historic. And Explorer, I think it's still close. I just have to play against it and with it. One issue is this only goes face, so you can't kill creatures. And the nice flexibility about Synth is you could kind of switch back and forth between if you're the beatdown or the opponent is the beatdown, and pointing your burn at their creatures or going to their face, where this doesn't give you that kind of interesting gameplay. So if you don't like very linear decks, this is probably not the deck for you, but I think it's going to be strong. Moving on. All right, here's the big one. Let me just make sure I didn't jump over anything. So this is another card that grows with creatures, but there's now better options. There's Infiltrator at 2 mana, and there's a whole host of other options that grow in white and green. And so I don't think you would ever see this play, but the effect is something to mention. Maybe it allows the deck to not play so many colors and still get enough payoffs to make that kind of style worth it. I don't think so, though. But here's what I'm excited about. Giss's Bidding. So this is a downshift, and it's going to be really powering up the Madness decks in Explorer Pauper and Historic Pauper. I think both. So this, instead of being the Madness decks that abuse Madness as a cheaper way to cheat out spells, the Control Madness version uses Madness as a card advantage, not a mana advantage spell. So you could be playing your Modern Ages and casting this for only 3 mana, but the casting for 3 mana is secondary to being able to basically a card that you would have discarded, use it. And so it's almost like create 2/2 zombies and draw a card for 3 mana. So it's a very, very strong card. I'm gonna post a couple videos of a couple new decks that I think are built by these cards, and one of them is Madness I'll just do the Explorer version. He's historic. You actually have a lot of options of how to build it. So moving on, this is another card. So I think this makes another deck in itself. Owl X played a deck trying to abuse Necromass. And unfortunately, there's not enough payoffs. Basically, you cycle enough creatures, and then you land a cheap Necromass, but that's not enough. So, a couple things. Basically, it was it was Zendikon who posted basically Reckless Recluse or Ragged Recluse. Is another really solid threat when you're cycling creatures. And then this gives you a third threat. So you'll have 12 threats in the deck to cycle to pay off for cycling like crazy. So I have a deck that I'm going to post a deck tech for. Luckily, this is already on Arena as an uncommon, so I was able to build the deck in Arena, and I'll hopefully be able to post some gameplay with this card. Owl X played a Rakdos version. The aforementioned Zendikon, he posted his mono black version. I actually built mine Golgari green black because I think the self mill green is really powerful, and I'll go over that deck tech. So just check out for that other video. Moving on, no new cards there. I guess this is a new card, but it's not really that relevant. This is a free discard outlet. We didn't have any free discard outlets before, but basically Modern Age does a good impression of a free discard outlet. Obviously, you have to do it only on that turn, but it's hard to interact with, and it gives you two goes. The first go, obviously, you have to spend at least 2 mana to put it into play, and then potentially you have to use your madness there. But then the second turn, it fires. It's probably better than this. The benefit of this is it kind of sits in play for multiple turns, but the bad part is it's much easier to remove your discard outlet. But I kind of went over that there's kind of 2 ways to build madness. When I was talking about Giss's bidding, you can build it more using the mana advantage of madness cards, or you can build it using the card advantage of that madness entails. And so obviously this card would go into the decks that are trying to use the mana advantage. They're trying to be much more aggressive, where the control decks aren't really going to want this card because it provides no card advantage to discard a card just to give it flying to get out a cheaper card. I mean, it's not a horrible play, but they're not looking to do this. So again, I'm going to post a deck tech of the Explorer Madness control version, and I'll leave it to someone else to post a more aggro version. And then this is another Madness card. I don't think it's that good. I'm going to get to one in red that's much more of a payoff. And the thing is, another card that we're missing, another Madness card, is Murderous Compulsion. It's a 2 mana sorcery, but then it also has Madness for 2 mana, destroy target tapped creature. That would have been a very, very solid card for the Grixis Madness control deck. This card is reasonable if you really need Madness cards in Explorer, but Historic, we definitely have enough Madness cards that this is trumped. So really only we'll maybe see play in an aggro version of an Explorer Madness deck. Okay, so moving on to red. We already had this card, but unfortunately that means that this is going to be the go-to removal that deals 4. So you have Fiery Temper that deals 3, and this deals 4 in the Madness deck. So you might want to play 1 or 2 of these. in addition to your fiery tempers, but unfortunately not getting the unconditional kill spell, or almost unconditional. It has to kill a tap creature. Means that basically the control decks only have this and fiery temper as madness removal. This is the better creature. If you're going to play red for madness, this is going to be a really solid creature because it's so cheap to madness out. It is vulnerable that first turn, but the good part about madness is it's pseudo instant speed, so you can crack a blood token on the end of your opponent's turn, madness this into play, and crack in and kind of surprise them, and now have a 5/2 in play. I think he's going to be pretty solid. Another benefit is he is a vampire, so for historic, when I go over the Shadows of the Past card list, you'll see that there's some vampire synergy cards, and slightly makes this a little better. But basically, I think there's, again, better creatures, unless you're going for the vampire synergy, better creatures in historic, but for Explorer Pauper, this is going to be a solid madness creature. It might even make more instant speed, deal 1 damage cards much more played. Because right now it's basically the sorcery like Mogus's Favor to kill X1s, but then by the time you get to play it, this one has already grown. So Mogus is not as good against this card, which is interesting to think about. Again, all of these cards aren't really that playable. It's weird that they printed Fiery Temper as an uncommon, but we still play with it, and it's still good. And Madness is a control as a burn spell. Very solid card in Explorer and in Historic. Kind of talked about it. Here's another solid removal spell. So in Explorer and in Historic, I guess if it's in Explorer, it's in Historic as well. There's Frostbite and Fiery Impulse. And so this is another card. The nice part about this is that it can grow to deal 4 by the third time you cast it, or third time, or if you have 2 in the graveyard, not necessarily have to cast the first 2. And then the fourth one dealing 5 damage is also very solid. So I think it's an argument. The downside about this one is you generally probably want to play all 4, and so you can't play with the numbers like you can with Fiery Impulse and Frostbite, where you only want to play like 3 of them or 2 of them. So this is going to be a solid removal spell in red decks. Especially control type decks that are going to go through their deck enough that they're going to see multiple of these spells to really stack. Another Madness card, I would say this is probably one of the worst ones, and the reason why is because the Madness is just too much. There's really not that many free ways to trigger Madness that you want to be doing, and so this is like turn 5, you're madnessing this out. It's just not worth it, unless you're really, really trying to just maximize all the madness. But at a certain point, you can't have just madness creatures. You need to have other creatures that make blood tokens or cards that discard cards for value to make it worth it to play so many madness cards in your deck. This is one. It's already on Arena though, but it's a vampire. It's a reasonable card. It has menace, so I was trying to play with it in the connections deck. What is it called? Tentative connection deck, where you steal the creature and sack it. But the card is a threaten, but only if you have a menace creature out. But just a 1/1 is just not where you want to be at. The Unwilling Ingredient is a much better menace creature that gives you a little bit of value later in the game. But this being a vampire maybe makes a vampire deck a little bit more viable. We don't really need this kind of effect in any Pauper formats. And there's better 4-mana ones that deal 1 damage to each creature and make everything not be able to block. So generally, the difference between 2 mana and 4 mana on the turn that you want to Alpha Strike and swing for the win doesn't really matter. So this being 2 mana compared to the other ones being 4 mana really doesn't matter. But still, those are only like 1 or 2 ofs in the decks, and very few decks are even looking for that kind of effect. I think 4 mana, this is going to be too expensive to really see a lot of play, but always these cards are a little bit of a consideration that can grow and get large. But I don't think this is playable. This actually might be on Arena already. I don't even know. But yeah, even if it's not that playable. All right, moving on to green, the last color. Let's see. So this card is so Bloodbriar. I think it's fine. What playing with Infiltrator, it is showing me that these kind of cards are a little bit of a trap. You can make a really large creature, but in Explorer Pauper and in Historic Pauper, a really large creature isn't really the be-all, end-all anymore. There's plenty of unconditional removal that can kill it. You can also kill it before it grows, but then also you can just race it. Like if you crash in with a huge creature, they can chump it and then they can crack back, or they can even just let the damage through the first couple times before it gets big and then be cracking back the whole time. So these kind of cards I don't think are that good. And you've seen that in my synth decks. I've played less and less of the Infiltrators. I don't think they're where you want to be. This card, it's interesting, but I think overall 4 mana is a little bit too much. This whole thing where it's dealing damage to creatures and you get to investigate, so it works well with fight spells. But it being a 3-power creature means that it doesn't work well with the best fight spell, which is Savage Swipe. So then you're on the tier 2, which is the Sky Shroud, something where if you fight and you win the fight, you draw a card. And then the second part, the Show and Tell effect. You can put in the prototype card, but there's not really that many good targets to like cheat into play with getting 3 or more clue tokens. What's weird about it is there's no the only good way to sacrifice the clue tokens is what's its name? Glimmer Baron. So Glimmer Baron can utilize the tokens, sacrifice them, and then you can cheat in an additional creature. But Glimmer Baron decks, the Jund Garden type decks don't really want to play massive creatures. So I don't think this deck is a thing, unfortunately, at least right now. This is one again that can kind of get better with more printing of bigger cards to cheat, bigger creatures to cheat in specifically. It's not just cards. But Pauper rarely gets really fancy, like 8 mana, 10 mana spells. I think Prototype was like the time that you could get it. And they're solid. Trample and Reach on the green one, the 10/10, is very solid, but it's not the be-all, end-all. This is a solid card for getting some more clues and so getting some more permanents on the board, and then it's a solid trick. So I could see a deck that has a little bit other clue decks utilizing this. There's that one Evoke creature that creates clue tokens, and then there's a couple other ones of the flashback spell that creates 1 token the first time, and then when it's flashback, it creates 2 clue tokens. But I don't think there's really anything like, yeah, it's kind of cute. You could synergize with the clues, but I don't think there's any way to use it. And then the unfortunate part of this one is it itself can't sack. Like, it would have been so much better if it was like, as an ability, it could sacrifice 3 clue tokens, you get a cheated creature card from your hand. But instead, it's a trigger, which means that you have to have another card that sacrifices the clues. And unless you want to pay 6 mana to crack 3 clues, which is just not where you want to be. All right. So unfortunately, I don't think any of those cards are really that good. Here's another one. This one's interesting because Death Touch 1/1 is playable, and then it growing a little bit bigger later in the game. The thing is, though, I don't think the green aggro decks really can utilize or can fill up their graveyard for Delirium that easily. They're trying not to play too many instants or sorceries. And obviously they're not playing any, if they're mono green aggro, they're not playing any fetch lands, so then it's hard to get a land into the graveyard. So this is a solid card, it just doesn't really have a home. So this is one where it will get better with more sets released, but I don't think there's anything right now that really wants it. This is a solid mill card, but I think there's better things to be doing for 2 mana to try to mill yourself, notably the creatures that mill, which again will be featured in my deck tech coming up later on today. So please check that out. This is a fight spell for Wolf or Werewolf decks. It's a reasonable spell because you can't get blown out by it, and you can also take down bigger creatures, but I don't think... It's funny that they printed this. I thought it was going to replace Rabid Bite because Rabid Bite's already on Arena, but they decided to have them both at common. So it's going to be really weird to draft because both of these are basically the same effect. Except this one is a little bit more specialized to only Wolf or Werewolf decks, but I think you'll get enough of those in green. Here's another really good card. I was talking with a couple people and in the discussion about the deck. About the card, and Alex was saying that potentially it's not going to be worth it because it's going to be tough to turn on the Delirium, and then the non-Delirium. I was rating the non-Delirium part of the card as reasonable, but he was saying that you really don't want to be doing that in the Proliferate decks. So this I think slots into Proliferate. So Proliferate decks. The issue is they play sorceries, they play instants, and they obviously play creatures. And then there are 2 colors, so you can't play fetch lands. There's only 1 artifact generally in the decks, the 1/1 that also moves its counters around. So it's tough to get all those 4 creature type or 4 card types into the graveyard, but it is possible. So it'll really depend on how it plays. Because obviously once you turn it on, because the turn it comes into play, you put a 1/1, and then on the opponent's upkeep, you also get another 1/1 if it stays in play, and you have the Delirium, obviously. So I think it's reasonable to test, but it might not make the cut. The Explorer and Historic Proliferate decks are actually have a lot of options, surprisingly. Actually, I'm going to probably do a deck tech soon of Proliferate, even though it's not my flavor of deck. Because I think it is a solid card, and people like the kind of the synergies of just +1/+1 counters. But so this is something to watch out for. But I could see it going both ways. I could see it being a solid card in the deck, and I could see it being just not played or only played in 1 or 2 of, because it's so rare to trigger the Delirium. And then so the thing you have to be careful of with these kind of cards is trying to warp your deck to satisfy the Delirium. And if you're warping your deck so much that you're playing bad cards or cards that slow your aggro deck, which green-white Proliferate is an aggro deck, if it slows it down too much that you're trying to get too cute by trying to get enchantments into your graveyard or other artifacts into your graveyard, because there are plenty of artifacts that can go to the graveyard. It's just, if you slow yourself so much doing those random stuff, this card becomes worse and worse because you're making your deck worse and worse. But if you can play a streamlined green-white Proliferate and still turn this on, that's where this card should shine. But again, it depends how it plays. And then obviously, the reason why I don't like Proliferate decks in general is the whole thing is like, if a creature's a problem, it just dies. So, if you have enough creatures living, then you're going to win the game no matter what. It doesn't matter if the creatures are 5/5s or if they're 3/3s that are growing or if they're 2/2s. If the opponent can't remove the creatures, then you're going to win. The only time that these kind of consistent things that grow is like if it's a stalemate, which most decks are trying to avoid a stalemate because a deck that wants to build with creatures really is going to fold to a long game of a control deck with card draw and removal and stuff, where they can pick which creatures they have to remove and which creatures they can let live and just sit there and staring at a wall of blockers. So remains to be seen. I could see it going both ways. I think there was potentially one other card. Oh, I just wanted to mention this one. That it's unfortunate that this one got upshifted as well. So it would have been a nice delirium effect. It also is a pretty good search because it searches for artifacts and enchantments and creatures. So it's good for kind of like combo-y type decks when you're searching for specific pieces. But unfortunately, it's not going to be eligible for Pauper unless you play Vintage Pauper on MTGA. And then the other colorless card is our Emerge card. Where is it? Wretched Griff. So this is a solid card. So when you're thinking about, again, the cards that you're cheating out, so you can't combo with Evoke, because you have to do this as a sorcery, so you can't evoke something and then emerge off of the evoked creature. It can work with Unearth, and with Prototype, it doesn't really work, because once you get the better half of the Prototype, you don't want to sack it. So basically it's with Unearth cards, and there's not that many Unearth cards. Again, the aforementioned Sphere Gargantua, but you want to be, I think it's much better off using the Essence Flux to blink it rather than trying to sack it to get out of 3/4 for a little bit cheaper. So this card is a strong card, but I don't think there's a home. Basically what this would want is like a control deck that has random creatures that have mana value, because control decks can make random tokens and stuff, but creatures that have mana value where you can discount this Emerge a little bit more. At 7 mana for 3/4 that draws a card, it's probably not worth it. Most definitely not worth it in my mind. I could be proven wrong, but I'm pretty sure that this is not going to see play in either Explorer or Historic Pauper. It's probably the strongest one that just is not going to get seen play. And then this card got a little bit of discussion because it is an end game card draw engine. It's just too slow. The formats are fast enough that you can't be doing this. You're just going to get blown out if you try to build your deck to try to investigate. You can use what's the one that gives you the Power Stones to try to make it a little bit more doable to get up to that enough mana. But if you're investing all of that stuff into trying to make this card work, again, it's not a good card. If you're having to warp your deck to try to be able to tap 6 or to pay 3, pay 4, and then pay 2, so you paid 9 mana to draw a card, so to basically cycle this card, and then the next turn you can play another 6 mana draw card. There's just so much more efficient things to be doing in both Explorer and Historic Pauper that this is not where you want to be. I would feel really, really bad if the format gets that slow where this is a viable card. I think even in MTGO Pauper with the Tron lands, this doesn't see play, because there's just so much better stuff that you can be investing your mana to be doing rather than trying to cycle for 9 mana. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed it, and then I hope you check out my little deck text for some decks that I think are going to get enabled by these cards. Bye-bye.